I know what I'm supposed to do here. All right, call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing as we have invocation by our own Miss Heather Ware. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Please join me in the prayer of invocation. Holy God, we give thanks tonight for your incredible blessings, for the great generosity of family, friends, and citizens in our community, for all of the privileges that we enjoy. We give thanks as well for your guidance in helping us to hear the truth you have placed in us. Help us to hear your wisdom in all decisions made tonight. Guide us as we seek to become the people of generosity and kindness that we are called to be. Amen.
Thank you, Heather. As most know, Heather is our volunteer coordinator here at the town. Thank you very much. Go on to Mayor's report.
Mayor?
And yes,
Roll call.
I'm sorry, roll call. Thank you, Beth. Roll call, please.
Mayor Schlum?
Here.
Councilmember Dickey? Here. Vice Mayor Hansen? Here. Councilmember Ashambo?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Cantino?
Here.
Councilmember Luce?
Here. Thank you very much. All right, now on to the upcoming Fountain Hills events. Thanks again for supporting the local retailers. They really need your support here, and we've got some tremendous places to go. I think, 50 plus places to eat in Fountain Hills. Isn't that right? Is Lori here, our Economic Development Coordinator, Administrator? So experience the great things we have here in Fountain Hills, and thank you for your support. Each Thursday afternoon continues Art in the Avenue and Farmers Market right down on the Avenue of the Fountains in downtown Fountain Hills. And this weekend, you may have seen the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the Fine Art and Wine Affair from 10 to 5, also on the Avenue of the Fountains. This Saturday, we have a guided hike that's going to be focusing on birds. And then we have the next day another concert in the park. This one's going to be Latin-oriented music. The last Sunday was just tremendous. If you were out there, great weather and a beautiful voice of Irish music. So a fun event, of course, that's free of charge. The same day, Wildflower Bingo is going on out at our partners at McDowell Mountain Regional Park. And then Wednesday, there's the Historical Society's dinner, Hall of Fame dinner, where they'll be recognizing and placing people into the Hall of Fame here, and that's at the Community Center at 6. The following Saturday, Extravaganza occurs, the Easter egg scramble down at Golden Eagle Park. I put 8:55 there because the kids do not wait beyond 9, so make sure you are there by 8:55, positioned for your egg scramble. And again, thanks to the Goyanas for sponsoring that once again. That same day, the Boys and Girls Club are having a run walk out there, of course, also at McDowell Mountain Regional Park. And then the next day, we have another concert in the park, Cowboy Country, Igor's Jazz Cowboys at Fountain Park at 2:30 as well. So, and then Thursday, April 1st is the official Census Day. I received my packet, so make sure you are counted. Follow the instructions in the packet, and make sure you're counted, because it means quite a few dollars in federal funds and other calculations for our community or wherever you are to be counted. And then Fountain Hills Athletics has baseball, track field, tennis and softball and golf going on, baseball going on, tennis. If you haven't been out to the middle school, that's where the high school plays their games. That field is amazing. It was ranked in the top parks around the country. It looks literally like a field of dreams set out there in the Sonoran Desert. So head out to a baseball game. The tennis team's playing, and the dates are there, so I encourage you to get out and support your local high school sports teams. Next item I wanted to just touch on is St. Patrick's Day brought us a one-year anniversary of losing our friend and council member Keith McMahon, who means a lot to so many people here in our town and did so much. I just wanted to formally recognize him again tonight on nearly a one-year anniversary. It was St. Patrick's Day last year when we had the horrible news of his passing. So we remember Keith McMahon, and I thought I'd ask if any council members want to reflect briefly on Keith's memory here as we recognize him here tonight. Cassie, anything you want to share?
I think one of the things that most people remember first off about Keith was his laugh. You could hear it. There was no one that laughed like Keith, except there is a gentleman that goes to Phil's, and it has almost the same timbre that Keith had. In fact, I went up to him and I said, "Did you know Keith McMahon?" So I always like to go to Phil's and have that man there because it's just the closest thing to hearing Keith laugh again.
That's cool. That's good. Ginny?
Well, again, this time of year reminds me of, well, last March when the theater has their Broadway in the Hills fundraiser, and Keith would sit with my family, my dad, and so last year he didn't come, and you were there, Henry, and Janet said, "Oh, where is he?" So the Thursday after, it was a Saturday, I came back and I was behind his chair. I said, where the heck were you? And he's like, "Well, I didn't feel really up to it." And he goes, "But I'm telling you, I would have come because I paid full price to come, and I would have been there." And so now with it being, I said, "Well, next time you better be there." And of course, it's this Saturday, so we will certainly miss him, and it will not be the same.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I'm going to share a story, and I'll have to paint a picture for you. This goes way back when Keith first came to Fountain Hills. And at the time, I was renting a house for my dad up on TP Drive. Now, if you go back to 1976, there wasn't a whole lot of houses on TP Drive. In fact, the frontage of the house was dirt road. But across the wash on the backside was Kingstree, or Kings Hill. Is it Kings Hill? Goes that? It's Kingstree, yeah, Kingstree Drive. So I had a person that some people will remember around here that was renting the bottom portion of this house. This house was built on a hillside, so we had a half basement and it daylighted out. And a person by the name of Dave Rowe, which we all called Crazy Dave, was renting the lower portion of the house. And Dave oftentimes would decide to get his guitar out and his drums and his loud musical instruments, and we'd sit up on the porch and just start jamming. So we were doing that one of these days. And Keith happened to be up on Kingstree, and he came over to the house and he goes, "Mike, if Archie knew what you guys were doing here, the neighbor across the street over there called the sheriffs." And I looked at Keith and I said, "Well, that gives us about 2 more hours." and Keith says, "I'm going to tell your dad." And I said, "Well, Keith, why don't you just join us?" And he said, "Well, do you have any beer?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, if you give me a beer, I'm sure I can play the drums." And so Dave got off the drums, and pretty soon we jammed for about an hour and had a good laugh. He never did tell Dad about it. And off we went. And we quickly pulled all the instruments away and never did see the sheriff. I don't think he ever knew where the house was, because this was took a little bit of a drive to try to figure out how to get to Teepee get up to the street, at the time. So, but I was thinking about that when you asked us if we want to reminisce, and I thought that was the one time that I can remember Keith just kind of stepping outside of his role and letting his, as we would call his hair down, and just goofing off. That's all we were really doing. None of us were good at playing any musical instruments. None of us could play the drums, and our singing was even worse. But the jackrabbits and the coyotes and the javelins, they didn't care. so we had a good time.
Well, thank you. Henry?
I think these pictures here kind of depict my memory of Keith, and as Cassie mentioned, the laugh was just, it's just an amazing laugh. And I don't know if Councilman Contino remembers or not, but Dennis and I, a year ago, we were actually standing waiting for the fountain to go off, and we got the phone call of his passing. So I made a point this year of going down there and watching the fountain go off, and you kind of could feel his presence. So when I see a green fountain, I think of Keith, and Cassie, when I hear a laugh like that, I think of Keith, and the smile is amazing. But probably the thing I appreciate most about him is working with him as a peer is that Keith and I had a tendency to, well, let's say that our ideology was kind of on opposite ends of the scale. Nonetheless, is a quality person, because at the end of the day, when the discussion was over, it was over. And he was real. and he was your friend, and that is awesome.
Good. Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor. My wife and I go out to lunch almost every day to one of the local restaurants, and it was truly like there was a memo that went out, because it didn't matter where we went to have lunch, Keith showed up. And it happened 4 out of 5 times for a year and a half or 2 years. It got to be a real classic, the unforgettable smile and the unforgettable laugh when he'd see us or we would see him, and I just so vividly remember how he would always walk up and ask the same question every time. I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission at the time, and he'd say, "Well, Commissioner, how are things in Planning and Zoning?" And then smile and laugh so boldly. And then the other thing the other place you always saw Keith was placing the signs during the Great Fair. He always put the no parking signs out, and he always had the smile on his face and was always enjoying it. And he is truly missed in our little town.
Thanks, Dennis. Dennis?
Well, I know that a lot of everybody's had some great stories, and I think that the last 2 years, Keith was probably over to our business maybe 3-4 times a day. And there's times that he would come over and say, "What are you doing?" And I says, "Well, we're working." And he says, "Well, let me sit down a minute." Next thing you know is he's got the chair leaned all the way back, and he's sound asleep. And for the last couple of years, Keith had bad health. Really showed up. He'd always had some problems, but it really showed up. And I attribute a lot of this that this man had a great heart, and I never said a word every time he came in, sat down, and fell asleep. And the other things were, when we had the fair, he always came over to our booth and sat in a scooter, but he would never get out and go. In the last fair in February, if anybody can remember, Keith hopped on a scooter and said, "Dennis, let's go." And we rode around in the fair, and we came up around La Montana and came back down around, and I lost Keith. I said, "Keith, what happened?" "Didn't you see that woman back there?" I says, "No, Keith, I didn't." Well, he says, "Well, let's go." So we went down to Saguaro Boulevard, and if you remember, Keith talked about on the dais one night about all the cracks and crevices because he was so close to the ground on the scooter. And this is some things that we have to do, is to just let people be themselves. And I knew Keith was having a hard time that time, and the last time was the best time was when Keith rode around with me at the St. Patty's Day event. And that's how I will always remember, is all the fun we had in that golf cart, riding around, and I had that experience to be with Keith, what I consider to be one of his last days here.
Yeah, thank you. And the pictures I put together here obviously help us remember Keith. The green fountain was mentioned, and the plaque that was raised, the funds raised by friends to put together the plaque that now sits in front of on a boulder in front of the museum and library area. If you haven't seen it, go by there. And then the picture I took of him, actually, because he's always taking pictures. I think we were both arriving at a ribbon cutting over at the Eagle Mountain Plaza there several years ago, and I took that picture, and I always liked that picture of him because he's going to a chamber event, he's got his camera, he took, I'm sure Jerry Mouse could tell us, thousands of pictures that so many people have gone through, but he's Mr. Volunteer. He's certainly a huge advocate for business, had a heart for our community that was never-ending. And he gave to our community, and our community is much better for Keith. And of course, the laugh is one of those enduring things that sticks with you as well. So, thank you, Council, for letting us reminisce and recognize our friend Keith, who's passed a year ago now. So, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to a proclamation. This one for the Boys and Girls Club. Whereas the young people of Fountain Hills, Arizona are tomorrow's leaders, and whereas many such young people need professional youth services to help them reach their full potential, and whereas the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale McKee Branch, located in Fountain Hills, Arizona, is providing services to more than 1,250 young people annually. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club McKee Branch is at the forefront of efforts in academic success, health, healthy lifestyles and good character and citizenship. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club in our town helps ensure that our young people have a safe and supportive place to go and provides them with quality programs. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club McKee Branch will celebrate National Boys and Girls Club Week 2010 along with some 4,000 clubs and more than 4 million young people nationwide. I, J.T. Shalom, Mayor of Town of Fountain Hills, hereby do proclaim March 21 through 27, 2010 as Boys and Girls Club Week in Fountain Hills and call on citizens to join me in recognizing and commending the Boys and Girls Club in our town for providing comprehensive, effective services to the young people in our community. And I adhere to set my hand and cause to be affixed the seal of Fountain Hills on this 18th day of March 2010. We'll talk more about Boys and Girls Club in a moment. Next proclamation is on National Volunteer Month. Whereas April is designated National Volunteer Month and giving freely to others in one of the noblest of human enterprises, and whereas this year marks the 37th annual celebration of Volunteer Month created in 1974 to recognize the efforts of dedicated community volunteers, and whereas nationally more than 120 million volunteers contribute their time and talents daily in the communities to make a real difference in the lives of others, and whereas more than 700 Fountain Hills volunteers donate their time in the town of Fountain Hills by giving approximately 24,000 hours in 2009 in volunteer service to the Community Center and Activity Center for Seniors and Boomers and the Municipal Court, as well as volunteering in departments at Town Hall, including Public Works, Planning, Zoning Administration, and Parks and Recreation. Now, therefore, I, J.T. Schlem, Mayor of the Town of Fountain Hills, do proclaim April as Volunteer Month in the Town of Fountain Hills and hereby express thanks to the many volunteers who support the Town of Fountain Hills by generously giving their time and talents to benefit our community. Dated this first day of April 2010. Now, of course, this represents just the volunteers helping directly our municipality in the efforts and day-to-day operations. Of course, the community is known, we have far more volunteers helping service organizations and so on and so forth, but this is one way for us to measure and recognize all volunteers in our community by taking part in the National Volunteer Month. So thank you very much, volunteers. As you know, we value you tremendously and need you and appreciate you. Next item, we'll go into scheduled public appearances and presentations. First one is introduction to the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale, Mary Ellen and Robert McKee Branch, Youth of the Year. Mr. James Grubb by Richard Schultz, the Senior Branch Director here in Fountain Hills. Welcome, Rich.
Welcome. Thank you, Mayor, Council members. Rich Schultz, Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale, McKee Branch, and I'm excited to be here with you tonight. Always at this time, we honor a special youth for our Youth of the Year at the Boys and Girls Club in Fountain Hills. This year we have an incredible young man, Mr. James Grubb. He's been a leader not only of our Boys and Girls Club, but for also the school as the community. James is our president of our Keystone branch. He is also into a new project called Go Green, Be Great, and he just helps in the club as well as in the community. And without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. James Grubb, the 2010 Youth of the Year, and this Saturday night, hopefully he'll be crowned our Boys and Girls Club of Greater Scottsdale organization, Mr. James Grubb.
Good to see you, James. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, James. Go for it, buddy.
Bert and Ernie, Batman and Robin, Tom and Jerry. What do these famous heroes have in common? Friendship. To me, friendship means that you are committed for the long haul, through successes and failures. So if this is what friendship is all about, then I would like to make an addition to this list. James Grubb and the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Scottsdale. See, throughout middle school, my self-esteem was at an all-time low. I always felt different from everyone else, and was ashamed of my character flaws. I continually doubted myself, but the club showed me that my flaws do not define who I am, and are actually just traits of my individuality. Best friends help each other with challenges in their lives. The club has, and is still, helping me overcome difficulties in my life, such as
attention deficit disorder, bipolar disorder, and Asperger's syndrome. As president of Keystone, my fellow Keystone members have helped me reach a confidence level I never knew I could reach. A best friend is always there for you, to see you grow and to guide you through your hardships. The club has been unconditionally supportive in helping me become a better individual and learning to love myself for who I am. I could vividly remember my first day at the Mary Ellen and Robert McKee branch, and I was timid and anxious. The staff were there to comfort me, and the upbeat and truly positive environment allowed me to develop my skills and morals which I utilize today. I could vividly remember my first day at the club playing dodgeball, and I managed to tag someone out, only to get hit in the head shortly thereafter. The first person to come over was another member, and to my surprise, he helped me up. It was at that moment that the club had permanently embedded itself in my life. 20 years from now, I will look back on my friendship with the club and think about all the loyalty and support I have received from it. I'll think about all those times when I was doing the sha-sha side, seeking advice from staff, or playing ping pong. And I'll realize that if it weren't for the club, I wouldn't be where I am today. Thank you.
James, great job. Mind if I come down and shake your hand? Excellent. So good luck on Saturday night, James, and thank you, Rich, for being here tonight. And just to add on to the volunteer recognition, we're going to be having a celebration at the Community Center next Thursday in appreciation of our volunteers as well as the community. So look for more information on that if you are not aware on our website, or contact Heather. Move on to our next items, presentation by Ms. Carol Groh, and Director of Fountain Hills Youth Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, and Sarah Brickler, thanks Sarah, and Pima Prevention Partnership relating to Fountain Hills Youth Substance Abuse Assessment and Planning for Reducing Underage Alcohol Use in Fountain Hills. Welcome, Carol. And I think I need to, do I need to hand back this clicker? Should have brought that down there, Carol. Yeah.
Hello. It's nice to see everybody, and thank you so much for having us, allowing us this time to speak today. And I also want to say a special thank you. Is it okay if I...
No, it's best you be by the microphone. I know it's odd to have your back to everyone, but the camera is here picking you up.
I want to say a special thank you to the council because I was here when we amended the goals of Fountain Hills to include fighting substance abuse. And I really want to, my hat's off to you for doing that before you even saw my presentation. So that's a great thing. Like we said, we have Mike Pryor with the Tucson Police Department, who's up here today, and Sarah Brickler, who's with Pima Prevention Partnership, which is a consulting and prevention expertise firm out of Tucson, Arizona. And they have been a great partner since I moved to town, which was in July, and started the coalition, which was in August. And there are great tracks to this coalition, and what I'd like to do today is I'd like to help you understand sort of from an overarching approach why coalitions are a good entity in a community, and then hone down into specifically what's happening in Fountain Hills, and then move further into what the council itself can do to help us with some strategies. So about 13 years ago, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy passed what's called the Drug-Free Community Act of 1997, which helped us to start figuring out how we can build coalitions and communities to work together to reduce substance abuse. They figured out that if we use the public health model is something that has been very helpful in communities when we have problems with disease And they looked at this from a standpoint of what if we use this model with substance abuse in the community. So if we take a look at this, I'm going to give you the example of smoking. And if you look at the host as the individual and the agent as the cigarette and the environment as the community at large, if you think about what happened in 1964, Surgeon General Luther Terry announced that cigarette causes difficulties in your health. And from there, we started doing things in the communities and with our laws that helped to change the environment. So if you think about it today, I remember about 25 years ago flying on airplanes where they were filled with cigarette smoke. And here we are today, and we have, basically smoke-free cities and smoke-free airports. So when you think about environmental strategies, I want you to kind of think about how we can use environmental strategies to approach things like substance abuse among our youth. Specifically, you can't look at a youth and depend on their great skills at 14, 15, and 16 to make the right decisions all the time. And I know that because I have a 15 and 16-year-old child. And I have learned as a parent that no matter how good a parent I am, it's not always going to matter when I send my kid out. I cross my fingers and I just hope that the pond that they decide to jump in isn't a polluted pond. I hope that they're going to go to places that people don't have drugs, people aren't using alcohol, but that's not the case. So if you think about approaches to try to reduce substances, you think about not only teaching the individual what to do and not only changing the behavior of the individual, but also you look at the agent, which is alcohol, and then you look at the physical context, which is our community. In figuring out how to work this strategy, the National Drug Control Policy figured out that, well, let's don't just start addressing things without figuring out what we need to address. So we used something that's very, very clearly detailed by the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy to develop coalitions. And this is called the Strategic Prevention Framework. I won't go into a lot of detail on it, but I'll just let you know that we have done a pretty thorough assessment. It took about 6 months to do in Fountain Hills. And I'd like to present the data of the assessment to you. And in the meantime, we have worked to build capacity. And I have left a couple of things up there for you. I'm going to just point those out right now. First is a handbook that you have. And this talks about coalitions and why coalitions are a good thing in a community and how they can help to reduce substance use. The next handout I have is some very specific criteria that is that we gathered by implementing something called the Arizona Youth Survey in our schools. And the very top page points to that. And as you move forward, you're going to see the strategies that we've developed as a coalition. And the last 2 pages of this handout list the 73 participants that we have in our coalition. In developing this, we have 14 different sectors in Fountain Hills, and very actively pursuing what we have now as an implementation plan. So as I move through these slides, I'm going to very quickly go through this, and I think you'll get the gist of we have a problem, and we're not the only place that has a problem. Most really rural towns have a 5% higher substance use rate than non-rural towns. So if you want to look at Fountain Hills as rural or you don't, it doesn't matter, but essentially we have some areas of youth use that is lower than the state average, but we have a lot of areas that are higher than the state average. That piece of paper on the very front, I've highlighted the areas that were higher. There's a pretty high impact of cost with substance use, and when we looked at our assessment, we found that about $670,000 of our Maricopa County Sheriff's Office money goes towards fighting substance abuse or related problems. Here are some very specific criteria. And when you do an assessment, you really try to look at not just what you're getting in a school survey data, and knowing that it isn't something that's just happening in school, it's happening in a community. It's just that a school survey a place for good surveys to happen is where you've got all the kids, which happens to be school. But this is Child Protective Services. Across the board, about 20% of all of the maltreatment in Fountain Hills could be attributed to substance use. And then we're going to move down into the juveniles. 120 minor consumption tickets were cited last year, and that's equivalent to the 65% of the senior class. It wasn't 65%, but it's equivalent to that. We went from 1 to 12 underage parties that were busted, and you can see the rest of these numbers. So, you know, what does this point to? Well, it points to a community that has similar to other problems in other communities, but if you look at that front page again, you'll see that if we look at specifically cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana, you can see in these next 3 bar charts where we stand. So cigarettes, I'd say in Fountain Hills we're doing pretty good. 8th graders, we have a much higher cigarette usage rate than across the state, but then it tapers down across the 10th and 12th grades. Marijuana in Fountain Hills amongst the 10th graders is about 1 in 4. So this data question that is asked in these surveys is, in the last 30 days, have you partaken in this behavior? And the answer of 10th graders, 1 out of 4, is yes. And we look at alcohol usage. This data, by the way, was gathered in February of this year. And alcohol usage rate amongst our 10th and 12th graders. There's also something to point out there between the 8th and 10th grade. There's a huge jump there. So a lot of people, and I'm sure if you've had kids and you've worked with parents, you hear this story of, well, isn't this a rite of passage? I mean, you know, we did it, so, you know, doesn't everybody do it? And I'd like to always point out, well, you know, back in the history of America, women couldn't vote. I mean, there were a lot of things that we used to do that aren't necessarily the right way that it should be. So here's just a little bit of data on youth drinking. If you start drinking at the age of 13, you have a 5 times more likely chance of having an alcohol dependence or use problem in your life. If you wait to 21, you only have a 10% chance of having an alcohol dependence or use problem. Lots of money is spent on underage drinking in Arizona, $1.3 billion in 2005. And of all of the alcohol that's sold, 17.3% of the alcohol sold in Arizona is to underage youth. This totals $443 million in profits for the alcohol industry. So I'm going to just kind of come into what do we do about this. Well, 5 pages of this handout are details of strategies that are comprehensive. I mean, it's not just, you know, all up to the town council or all up to the schools. It's comprehensive. There are a lot of things that a lot of people are going to need to work on. And the 5 pages that I have here that I've given to you, this is a draft, and this is something that we can implement if we are able to seek the funding and be awarded the funding that we have applied for in the form of grants. One of these specific strategies that we have in here is what would be called an environmental strategy, which is type of passing an ordinance. And I'm going to move through here really quickly to talk to you about where this strategy falls. So you have 7 different types of strategies that you can implement inside a community. The first 3 here are really more about that individual. So you can provide information, you can change their skills, you can help support them to make the right decisions. But the ones that have the largest impact are the environmental strategies. These are the ones that are going to be the most far-reaching and the longest lasting. And these are these last 4 here. So you're going to work to change consequences, change physical designs of stores, change rules and policies, and also try to work to change the consequences. Now I'd like to introduce Sarah Brickler from Pima Prevention Partnership, and she's going to talk a little bit about a very specific ordinance that we can look at working with here in Fountain Hills, which is a social host ordinance.
Thank you, Carol. Let me just give you a little bit of background about social host and unruly gathering ordinances. These sorts of ordinances, again, are really about protecting our youth. We know that our youth face a lot of negative consequences as a result of underage drinking. You know, they are more likely to be assaulted. They are more likely to end up in our emergency departments, overdosed, and even worse consequences. So this concept is really about considering those individuals that are hosting parties where youth have access to alcohol and making those adults responsible for their behavior and giving them another reason to think twice before they become a party to underage drinking. So again, it's really about making adults responsible for their role in underage drinking and limiting access to alcohol for our youth. I wanted to just let you know that in considering the sort of ordinance, you really are leaders in Maricopa County. At this point in time, social host and unruly gathering ordinances, which are really party ordinances, have been very popular in the United States. There's about 30 states that have so far drafted a state law, and a lot of municipalities are filling in the gaps where laws do not exist. At this point, there are 7 counties in the state of Arizona that have municipalities that have passed some sort of law that holds those individuals that hold parties responsible. And it seems like there's been so much momentum in the state of Arizona, but a lot of it's really happened in southern Arizona. We have a special guest with us tonight, Lieutenant Mike Pryor from the city of Tucson. City of Tucson, Pima County, Pinal County, our neighbors to the south have passed these laws quite aggressively. And so Maricopa County has been kind of an area where there hasn't been a lot of action taken yet. City of Phoenix has had an unruly gathering ordinance. And I know there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of interest around the county, but I just wanted to kind of give you the background that you're really at the forefront of taking action to protect our youth. We always want to be thinking about the data. We want to be able to understand what's happening specifically in Fountain Hills so that we can develop strategies that are appropriate to your community. So it's not one size fits all. We want to consider the specific conditions in Fountain Hills. When we looked at this data from that was collected in February of 2010, trying to look at where is it that our youth are getting alcohol. We know it's illegal for them to buy it. How do they get their hands on it? 50% of your youth are getting alcohol at parties. Just wanted to point that out. We want to make sure that we are targeting our youth at the area where we're likely to have the greatest impact in terms of securing their health and welfare. We already have quite a few laws on the books around underage drinking. So some of you might be wondering, why do we need another law? But let's just review some of the laws that we have already. It's illegal for adults to provide or furnish alcohol to youth. It's illegal for youth to possess alcohol, to consume it, to have it in their body even. And it's illegal for them to try to purchase it. But what we need to be thinking about are how to be comprehensive in our approach. We often know youth are so smart, they'll find the back door to alcohol, and adults are helping them to that back door. So one way we can look at this is we're already targeting the way that they get alcohol, but let's target the location where the drinking is occurring. I think often we've had a lot of kind of misconceptions that parents have often thought, my kids are going to be safer if I allow them to drink at home. I can supervise them. I can kind of control the situation. But we see that often it kind of can spiral out of control. And as Carol had pointed out, the younger you start drinking, the more at risk you are for other health problems. And often it's difficult for older friends to be able to say, you're not of age, I'm not going to give you alcohol. So we have a lot of we often feel that drinking alcohol is a rite of passage for our youth, and social host ordinances are a way of taking a stand as a community that we want to keep our youth safe, and that we're going to be listening to the data and listening to the consequences that our youth are facing. This isn't about just keeping alcohol out of the hands of youth. This is about keeping our youth from experiencing the negative consequences as a result of drinking and driving, overdosing, etc. I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Pryor to come on up. And really, you don't want to hear from me so much. You want to hear from somebody who's experienced this firsthand as a law enforcement officer and has had the experience in his community. So, Lieutenant Pryor.
Thanks, Sarah. Welcome, Lieutenant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for your time. My name is Mike Pryor. I am a lieutenant with the Tucson Police Department. Currently, I'm the executive officer for Chief Villasenor, although I've spent a lot of time working in the field in the area of underage drinking. And just for matter of background, I've worked with communities throughout southern Arizona and, in fact, with the IACP, the Police Chiefs Association, throughout the country on social host issues. So hopefully I can distill some information down that'll be meaningful to you on social host. And again, I really thank you for your time. Sarah said something that I think is very, very telling. 50% of our kids, 50% of your kids, my kids, are getting alcohol at parties. In essence, what's happening is we have members of the community that are getting our kids drunk for us. And the question we have to ask ourselves is that okay? Is that okay for us? I can tell you what happens at the typical underage drinking party. The police show up, there's anywhere from 15 to 150 kids. And guess what they do when law enforcement shows up? They scatter. They run. They run for their lives, as a matter of fact. And the problem is, when you as a law enforcement officer may be showing up with 2, 3, maybe 4 officers to handle that situation, you're not able to get those kids. Not because you want to catch them and arrest them, but because you want to make sure they're safe. You want to make sure they don't run in front of a car. You want to make sure they don't get hurt. The other thing that is very difficult to do is when you start catching these kids and you try to determine where they got the alcohol. What do the kids say? It was just there. You find the adults. Are any of the adults going to admit giving the kids alcohol? No, they're not. So what you end up with as a law enforcement officer is you end up with 15 or 20 kids that you manage to catch and arrest for underage drinking, and the adult enabler walks. And you've accomplished, in essence, nothing. Bless you. So what are the purposes of a social host or an unruly gathering ordinance? You see what's up there. There's some other things. Part of it is the direction you give to people like me, the direction you give to law enforcement as to whether or not you want us doing something about people providing alcohol to kids. The other purpose of it, in addition to these things, is it focuses our investigation. It tells us, don't go after the kids. Yes, we have to catch them. That's part of our job. But you're telling us, focus on the adults. Go after the people that are getting our kids drunk without our permission. On page 10 of the book that you have there is something that's very telling. It's a quote. They say I said it. I'm not sure. I just want to point out that there is a very close nexus to violent crime beyond DUI and underage drinking. In the community of Tucson, we had a spike in our violent crime 2 years ago. Our strategy was to go after unruly gatherings as quickly as we could and mitigate them as efficiently as we could. Every single one of our violent crime stats dropped. Homicide, aggravated assault, assault, for those of you with daughters, sexual assault, they all dropped. So these laws really help us with those types of things. Now, we already have some laws, as Sarah pointed out. There is a state law that you see on your screen right now that talks about it's illegal to give kids booze. The problem is when you think about proving this, how do you prove that when you've got kids who are not going to tell you where they got the alcohol and you have an adult who's saying, I didn't do it, can you prove it? Because that's what we run into all the time. The other part of that is, do we really want to make our kids witnesses in a court of law trying to prosecute an adult enabler? So that's another part of it. Ultimately, when you look at the tools that we have, and here's a quote, the Title IV laws are they're unwieldy. They're difficult to use. They're difficult to prove. We end up arresting people, and we just can't get convictions. Now, a social host law gives you some options. One of the incredible things is you have local problems. You don't need a statewide solution to a local problem. You need a local solution. Social host and unruly gathering laws allow you to target that law, to craft that law for your problem. As you can see here, there's some different types of things. You can do fines. You can make things infractions. Unruly gathering, that's not really why we're here, other than to say unruly gathering is an option in addition to the social host laws. Here's what I was trying to get to was the considerations for the ordinance. You can make this whatever you want it to be. The idea is you're telling me as a law enforcement officer how you want me to police this community. How do you want me to serve your constituents? You can make it an 18-year-old law, anybody over 18. You can include narcotics. City of Casa Grande, when I worked with them, they love the alcohol part. They've got a problem with people providing marijuana. So they added marijuana, or they added narcotics into their law. How many people need to be present? You get to dictate that. You get to craft this ordinance to make it exactly what you would like. I'll tell you, you're not alone. When you look at this, there are jurisdictions all over the state that are either past a social host or are on the verge of it. And I'll tell you, you can add some places. City of South Tucson is very close. City of Marana is very close. I just recently did some work with some towns in Mississippi. There's about a half a dozen towns in Mississippi that are very close. It's just gaining because it makes so much sense. Kind of give you a little visual here of where everybody's getting it. And while I'm throwing these things up, as you can see, in my experience, what I found is many communities want to support law enforcement. Many communities want their children to be protected. They don't want strangers giving alcohol to their kids. And they want law enforcement, they want the guys like me out there to go after the people that are giving them the alcohol, not the kids that are drinking it as the target of the investigation. That's everything I have prepared. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant, for coming up. Thank you, Carol. Do you have anything else in closing?
No, thank you again for your time, and I just wanted to say if we have 2 minutes for questions.
Sure. Council members, any questions for Carol? Appreciate it. Councilmember Contino.
Yes, thank you. Carol, how close are we to going to your next step?
With the social host ordinance?
Yes.
Well, I think that the next thing that would happen is there would have to be a work session where we would talk about what this might look like, what we'd want to do here in Fountain Hills, and I can provide you lots of examples in the packets you have. You have lots of examples, and so you know we can keep having conversations. I do want to make a really big point, and that is you have to be, as a community and as a coalition, we have to be very responsible about how we do pass one of these ordinances. And you don't just pass it. So one of the things that you really want to make sure you do is you want to pave the groundwork in the community, which I think that we have a pretty heightened awareness right now of the alcohol and drug use that has happened in our youth, or is happening with our youth. And we want to do things with this ordinance that will help to educate the people in our community, because this isn't a witch hunt. What this is it's a step towards changing social norms, because it basically is not okay. And so we really have to work as a community to help everyone understand that we're working together and we're not going to enable them to enable their kids and other kids. So we do a lot of groundwork before something like this is passed. And in addition to that, we also have the ability to create these sorts of programs that are diversion programs, that are training programs for first offenders of this. So there's a little bit of that kind of work, and I think we just all work together as a community and definitely with the coalition to figure out next steps, Dennis.
I think in the last 29 years since I've been here that we've just skirted this issue and tried to put it underneath the rug. And I think what we need to do is bring it out like you're doing, and I want to thank everybody tonight for being here, because we do have this problem in Fountain Hills, and it's been making the front pages, and it concerns adults as well as teenagers. And we got a case pending right now on that, and I would like to see something done.
Any other questions, Councilmember?
Carol, could you talk about your next coalition-wide meeting? Just maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, we have a couple of things that are going on right now with the coalition. One is we're creating a community-wide symposium, and one of our fathers in town that it was sort of the impetus to the coalition forming, Mike Vaught, is going to be leading that event and that project. And the purpose of that is going to be to bring together a lot of people in a panel and bring all of the community members, teens, parents, so they can understand what the laws are around underage drinking, and they can understand the impact to their development, to their health, and they can understand if we are looking at this kind of an ordinance. And so that's a symposium. That's one of our big things we have going on coming up. And that meeting actually is next week. And then the last Monday of this month, we have a coalition-wide meeting, and that's where we really open it up for people to come and talk about the concerns that they have, and we try to put that in with our implementation plan and keep going with the momentum that we have to try to fight this problem that we have in our community.
And where will that take place?
And the symposium planning session is going to be at the Learning Center at the high school, and the community-wide meeting is going to be at the community center. And some of these grants that we have applied for, I just want to acknowledge the people in this town because it's been phenomenal. We've had 0 funding up to this point, and as you can see from the momentum that we have, it hasn't been able to have been done with nothing and no help. The schools have been tremendous in supporting this. Dr. Meyer has been just a classic leader from our school sector. The town has been amazing, offering the community center up, and we're working on a partnership so that we can do things together with the town. So, you know, there are all these different sectors that have been doing tremendous things to support this cause.
Thank you.
Yeah, anyone else? Questions, comments? Carol, thank you. As you mentioned, parents brought this forward, probably talked to various people, but I recall meeting with Mike and pastors and other folks several months ago, and it's sometimes difficult to get things going, and you really have stepped up and brought the focus to this, and now formed the coalition. You said 14 sectors of our community being engaged, and I know meetings are attended by tens of people, so it's tremendous, and the resources you've already brought in here. And the norming, the changing the norms are most important element that I'm excited about. And kids don't understand a lot of things, so the information you're bringing forward, parents may not be as aware of things. So our town is certainly not putting its head in the sand, and the Fountain Hills Times and others are sharing more information about this challenge we have before us. So it's not that it's getting worse, it's that we're really putting the light on this issue so that we can address it as a community, and the coalition's a great example of community members coming together. For example, I found out that underage drinking citations don't go away when you turn 18, Most kids, youth, parents think that this is something that could be on a child's record. Well, as they're adults, could affect where they're employed and so on and so forth. And of course, the coalition is full of volunteers, so like you had mentioned, the support and the engagement of our community is no surprise, but we thank you for being the spearhead here and actually trying to get some funding from some different sources so you can share the message and have education and other efforts as well. In Fountain Hills, youth substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, prescription drugs abuse is not acceptable in Fountain Hills. And the tolerance is not acceptable either, because the tolerance or condoning of that youth substance abuse puts all of our kids at risk, not just those kids that will escalate their use and become more dangerous, but kids that are drinking put other youth at risk, and it's something that's just not tolerated here. As we also know, we saw a great example of how great our youth are here in Fountain Hills, the Boys and Girls Club, and James Grubb being recognized as a shining star in our community, but of course the vast amount of kids in our community are just outstanding, and even the kids that are experimenting with these things are outstanding youth, and we support them 100%. But thank you very much for spearheading the coalition, and encourage more people to get a hold of Carol directly to support her as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We did take some extra time on some presentations tonight, but that was important. Our agenda is relatively short, and we're going to move into that now. First, we'll address and thank you everybody for coming on there, the support you're giving. We'll move on to our consent agenda, and I'll look, and we're removing consent item number 3 and putting it onto the regular agenda at request of Councilmember Contino. But items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'll look for a motion to approve as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Contino?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Hanson.
Aye.
Mayor Slum.
Aye.
Councilmember Leger.
Aye.
Councilmember Dickey.
Aye.
Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
Councilmember Ashambo.
Aye.
Mayor 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. Move on to regular agenda, and we'll go back to what we see here as item number 3, which is the consideration of approving a temporary extension of premise application submitted by David Link, Grapables Fine Wines, located at 12645 North Saguaro Boulevard, Fountain Hills, scheduled for April 10, 2010. Rick, do we have a presentation on this, or should I just look for council discussion on this item? We do have the staff report here on page 45 in the packet. Do you have anything from staff on this item?
I do not. I would defer to Planning and Zoning. Richard here. There you are, way over there. If you have anything on this, we don't at this time.
Okay,
No.
so we'll see if there's council questions on this item. Again, it's consideration of approving a temporary extension of premises application to Grapables. Councilmember Contino, did you want to have dialogue on this item?
Yes, thank you. I've had a lot of constituents, maybe a dozen, talk to me in the last couple of weeks about the noise. And I think that one thing that we want to try to keep down is the noise that we have, and especially after the hours that people go to bed. But the thing that bothers me is the idea that I came off the performance pad a few weeks ago, came around the lake, and I got right by the fountain over there, the closest part of it, and I could hear the noise really loud of the music coming from there. I think that in that setup that they have, I think that they have a certain area that they need to keep restrained to, because you have other restaurants right there too. Maybe the other restaurants don't want to hear the same type of music. And I think that what we need to do is kind of constrain that and keep the noise down, not only for our residents, but also for the other patrons that are there. And I do think, and I know now, that we do have problems with the expansion of different things on the fencing of the areas that they have. Some of them have been violated, and we're trying to work on that. And I think Richard can look at that and talk about that. But right now, I think that what we're looking at is how much of the extra places that they got are going to be cutting off the businesses that they're going to take for the extensions for what they want to do all the way out there. I saw the paint sprayed on the ground, so that's why I'm sitting back saying it was quite a significant amount of area that they wanted for that extension.
And thank you. And what, if you could, to help me, when you were coming from the performance pad, you were moving around the park. Where did you hear the noise or the music?
Right around the last bend, coming around right directly, almost closest to the fountain right there.
So by the splash pad area?
No, way out on the park, coming about halfway from the performance pad to coming up to like where Euro Pizza is.
Okay, so the sound was traveling down.
I was traveling
that way.
Yeah.
Thank you. And on page 47 of the staff report, it shows the area being considered. It's 40 feet by 20 feet out beyond the existing patio currently. Councilmember Dickey?
Mayor, is there anybody that wants to speak on this?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this, Bev?
No, Mayor.
I'll ask the applicant to come up if you want to do that now, or you may as well come up and maybe we can ask you some questions as well. First, Mr. Link, thanks for coming. Do you have anything you wish to share with us initially?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do. Councilmember Contino, I'm I think a very respectable business person here, and when I first got a noise complaint about this, I did the same thing that you did. I walked around the park. When I got over to the Veterans Memorial area, which is primarily where most of the houses are, I could barely hear anything. My second noise complaint that I received, I actually had the sheriff come to me and told me he sat in the parking lot there by the splash park and didn't see where the noise was that audible to him. The last complaint that I received, my doors were actually closed and my music was inside, and a person complained about that as well. So part of this, I think, I'm trying to be responsible, and I've reached out to various members, not only on the council but with the chamber as well, because obviously I do want to do what's right for the business, but I also want to do what's right for my customers. Many of my customers, you've got 12 people that have registered complaints about noise. I've got a number of people that want a place, want a venue to go to where they can sit out on the patio, listen to music, enjoy themselves to something a little bit later than 9:30 at night. The other thing I'd like to point out is Grapables has been in business here for 10 years in this town. They have had music on that patio for 9 of those years. There's never once been a complaint about any of the music that's been going on. So that's the complaint, that's the noise part. The actual request for the extension of premise is at the beginning of what I'll call the fall season, which was October 17th to me. I requested the same type of extension of premise, and it went through on the consent agenda with no problem. Now I'm doing the end of season, so the April 10th is really the end of our season in terms of having a band out there. Normally I wouldn't have big bands like this, but I've had several requests for that. In terms of the actual premise that I'm taking up, AZ Styles will be closed. The hair salon next to me will be closed. Marita at Euro Pizza Cafe, she and I talk regularly. She enjoys our music. Most of her customers enjoy our music. There's never usually a problem there. The Octagon Cafe will be closed. All the businesses will be essentially closed at the time our music starts that evening. And so that's why I'm here tonight. I was kind of confused when I got a call yesterday. I was in California to come and talk about this. But I hope that you see it, to allow me to do this. I'm trying to do as best I can for this business and for the community, and in doing so I reached out to several members and tried to do the right thing. So
Thank you. Mr. Link, any questions or comments from staff or from council?
Thank you. And, I think the town is supportive of this kind of activity in that P&Z is now looking at amending the downtown zoning district to, encourage this type of thing. And I think they were grappling with their last meeting about, how do you decide what the acceptable parameters are, the distance and that type of thing. And probably the article in the newspaper kind of, brought this up as well. I think it's really helpful to hear what your plans are for the event. The staff report didn't really reflect that, so we didn't really know what the intent was or even that there would be music. So I think that's probably why this was kind of all of a last-minute thing. But I think, by and large, there is a support. I mean, we want to see the activities.
Yeah.
And I think if we can just, maybe just, recognize the fact that, like you say, you're very respectful of your neighbor businesses and the neighborhood in general.
So to answer your question, Vice Mayor, about what we plan to do, it's the same exact thing we did back in October. It's the exact same band, the exact same number of people, and it's the exact same dimensions that we're looking for to extend our patio. The issue, one of the reasons why it sounds so big, 40 by 20, is because right in the center is one of the statues. And, so that takes up at least 2 to 3 tables of space that we would normally require. So that's the reason it sounds big, but trust me, it's not as big as, once you get the people out there, it's not as big as it seems. And about the last event that we shared back in October, extremely well received by the community. We had probably 85 to 100 people there for that. And it was a lot of fun. And that night we never received any kind of noise complaints. I cut the music off at 11. I do not go past 11. And I always try and stick to that. Now, whether 11 is the right time or not, I think that's something that we could probably debate in the future. But again, I think this is something the community is looking for, and this is something that I've tried to provide to them.
And it's helpful to know that you're having dialogue with your neighboring businesses, too.
Yes, all the time. I talk with Euro Pizza frequently about this because we start our music at 7:30 on Fridays and Saturdays, and that's at the time when they have a number of people out on the patio for dinner. And if they ever have any issues with that, they call me up, and I ask the guys to turn it down or to shut it down until 8 o'clock. So I think we try and work that, and I think Marita would say the same thing.
Appreciate it. Councilmember Cantino?
Oh, Henry, do you have something?
No, well, just a comment. I go to Euro Pizza sometimes just so I can listen to your music, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Councilmember Cantino.
Thank you. I am pro-business, and I am a businessman also, and I know that we need these things. I guess that I was just looking at some of the constituents that come to me, and I hope you appreciate them, because as an elected official, I have to take a look at both sides of it. There wasn't anything wrong with it. It's just the idea that residents had complaints, and that's why we're here tonight, and I appreciate you coming forward.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that, you know, there are things that I've talked about with some of the other businesses down there about, you know, maybe we could start a little bit earlier, end a little bit later. It's just that when I first took over the business there and I started polling some of the people that were coming in there, what are you really looking for in this business that we're trying to develop here? One of it was to change up the entertainment and to hold it a bit longer so that people have a place to go to. Now, I realize that other businesses have cropped up since then, but this is kind of the business model I've created now, and it's kind of hard to move away from that. So.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shambo?
Thank you, Mayor. Just last week, we had St. Patrick's Day down in the park. We had a band playing. I certainly could hear them around the park area. I didn't think that was very offensive. And I'm not saying that some of the people that don't live down, especially when you get over to the memorial, you know, you get those condos that are right over there. But I was thinking as you were talking, I was going like, wow, we had the band playing down at the performance pad. That performance pad has been there for a number of years now, and we have in fact, we're going to have a performance
Sunday.
On Sunday, you know, and although we try to keep it within a reasonable level, and sometimes the bands get a little anxious, you know, and I'm glad to hear that you're kind of watching over your band, but I can't ever remember, and I've been down to Euro Pizza and I've been over and around by the memorial and stuff. I can't, in the evenings, on the weekends when you have your bands there, I can't ever remember it being offensive. So I'm certainly comfortable with what you have proposed to us before. I don't think we've ever gotten, Rick, have we ever gotten any complaints from the performance pad that you're aware of?
No,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any.
And we're looking to, you know, enhance the experience when people come to Fountain Hills. Certainly, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
You know, and you add to that value, and I don't want to diminish from that at all. So, thank you for coming up and speaking to us.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Diggy?
Move to approve the temporary extension of premise application as written.
Second.
All right. First and second, I just want to add, Mr. Link, thanks again for coming, and I will just point out, we certainly have the police are there if there are noise issues, but I think it's always in everyone's best interest, being a small town, to, you're approachable. You know, you've received complaints and you've dealt with those directly. I encourage you, if there are neighbors that have challenges, to come and get with you directly, to speak with you. If they're grapables, or give you a call. I'm sure you'll be somebody that'll be sensitive to things. This is, as the staff report pointed out, clearly limited to a particular area, and it's just for one day.
It is.
It says it's just for April 10th. So encourage everyone to look into things as much as they wish, to make sure they're comfortable with items. But as was stated, you know, Fountain Hills is into helping our businesses succeed, and we've been making strides and listening to our businesses to help them to be successful time and time again, and we're always going to look to improve on that. And your effort to serve your customers is something that we support, and of course we'll always look to maintain our quality of life and to enhance it. And of course the balance is in that relationship you can have, and appreciate your being sensitive to the feedback of others and other businesses as well as residents around you. So wish you good success on your April 10th event. So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Next item, item number 9, consideration of resolution 2010-01, approving the Town of Fountain Hills 2009
Mayor.
hazard mitigation plan. Yes?
Number 8.
Oh, did I skip one? Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. I don't know why I did that. Jerry and Mark were probably about ready to kill me on that one. Item number 8, presentation with consideration of approving the creation of 2 demonstration projects near the amphitheater in Fountain Park. Mark Mayer, welcome.
Bear with me a moment here.
You're adding more dots. Just put your own dots up there.
I thought I hit that once. I wasn't doing it. Thank you.
I think you're just here to swear you.
Mayor Slum and members of the council. I'm going to start off with some opening comments, and then I will turn the podium over to Jeff Denzak. Jeff Denzak, if you recall, is with the firm of Swaback Partners, who is doing the actual landscaping plan under the greening of the downtown. He will be followed by Jerry Butler, who's the chair of the greening of the downtown committee, and finally invite up Patricia DeRoss, who is with SRP, who is also one of the groups that stepped forward to help us in this particular effort. As you know, this is very much of a public and private cooperative arrangement. Those are the different organizations, including the town, who are involved in this particular process. As you recall, this is part of the overall downtown visioning, of which there are some 9 categories, the greening of downtown being one of those. Tonight's program, we want to cover a little bit of background, which I'll go into, bring everybody up to speed, and talk about an overview, and then I'll turn it over to Jeff, who will talk about some landscaping ideas and bring you up to date on the actual plan. Tonight, we're just under consideration for the 2 demonstration gardens, they being the most critical, because the intent, as we'll go into a little bit later on, is to have those in the ground and ready for the end of April. So that's the time frame that we're working under. Back on December the 3rd, I approached the council, and the council agreed to finance the preparation of design conceptual plans for the greening of the downtown, specific to Fountain Park and the demonstration gardens. That's really what we're here tonight to talk about. Jeff will talk about the overall plan as it relates to the demonstration gardens. As we went through that conceptual process, Jeff had an opportunity to take his plan forward to the full committee. We all took a look at it, provided comments. Those were in turn incorporated into his plan. Follow-up to that was a public meeting that was held several months ago, after the Park and Rec Commission had also, several weeks ago, after the Park and Rec Commission had also had their opportunity last month to take a look at the plan and provide comments. At the Parks and Rec Commission meeting, they approved the plan, 6 with 1 abstention, and recommending the acceptance of not only the overall plan, but also the demonstration garden areas. At the public meeting, we were extremely pleased. There were close to, by my count, 100 folks, and many of you also attended. That was greatly appreciated. I received a number of comments that evening. Again, Jeff went back and incorporated those into his overall plan, and those are what he will provide some additional background to you this evening. The downtown visioning plan, as I mentioned, there are 9 components of that: Park Link, Saguaro, the venues, visitor center, the avenues, business district, town square, the south end, and then finally the greening of downtown. What we think this project will bring forward is expansion of shade areas and also the improvement of the ambiance in the downtown area and Fountain Park. It's designed to not only attract additional visitors, but also residents and investors, expand usage of the park, make park benches more comfortable as providing more shading. Certainly will increase the potential usage of those park benches on what we call the shoulder months, a little later into the spring as it starts to warm up, and again a little earlier in the fall. And then finally, landscaping vacant lots are also a plan to be talked about a little bit later on. Again, I just want to mention that here's the time frame that we're working under, 2010. It's a very aggressive schedule to try to create the demonstration projects and have them literally in the ground by by Arbor Day. And then begin the major planning this fall. Finish the planting a second round in the fall of 2011. And then the potential, which Jerry will talk a little bit more about, is for having this as a centennial project for 2012. With that, I will turn it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Mark. Welcome, Mr. Denzak. How are you?
Good, well, thank you,
Good.
Mr. Mayor. Good to see you. Madam Vice Mayor and council members, good to see everybody.
Nice shirt.
Thank you, sir. Mark was too afraid not to wear a sport coat tonight. I'm just going to try to talk for about 10 minutes and give an overview. I think some of you have seen some of this information. We spent some time with the group talking about quality of outdoor spaces. You've heard Vern Swanback talk a lot about The Last Child in the Woods, the image of the book cover on the left. And Vern and I and one of our senior partners who's with me here tonight, John Bernhard, who is also a resident of Fountain Hills, we think about the planting of trees as an important component to your improvements for downtown, not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but from a social standpoint. And a lot of the things that we've been talking about tonight are part of the issues of why it's important to plant these trees. And one that we were thinking of just sitting and listening to the discussion was of sound attenuation. Your issue of the music, some of these trees would actually significantly, I think, help with that issue of sound traveling. So beyond some of the things that we've been thinking of, there's great advantages to that. And just to note, in the middle of your screen is Frederick Law Olmsted, the father of landscape architecture, and to the right, a gentleman, Michel Devine, a European landscape architect, who is thought of as the next Frederick Law Olmsted. And as many of you have heard me speak about Michel before, is he has a strategy of coming into projects and planting literally thousands of trees and letting those trees grow, and in the future come back, remove trees, transplant them, and then place buildings. Very different from how we think about planting trees here in the West.
Point out, Jeff, that book is a great one. That's one of my favorites.
Isn't that great?
As far as development and ensuring that there's nature involved in life, not just, these students today aren't necessarily out in the woods or laying in the grass, as the book illustrates, or kicking over rocks. Today's youth are doing other things.
Absolutely.
And so it is a loss for the youth of today. So incorporating nature into things is a great idea to keep top of mind.
And as you all know, and Vernon has said it many a times, the best places to visit are those that already work well for the people that call it home. And again, as we've talked about, one of the things that we've heard many, many times is the issue of comfort in the park. So obviously, shade and comfort is a key to this effort, and the idea of wouldn't it be great to be able to be on that 1.2-mile stroll along the perimeter, along the walkway, and be able to walk through a grove of trees, not constant, but having these clusters where you can have that opportunity and to walk through the trees, walk by the trees, and then to see into the trees. And as you know, we've been thinking about this in different zones, and obviously zone number 1 is the Fountainside area. Zone number 2 is the future Lakeside District, so we literally have tried to hold back strategies for that area because we know that there's potential for development. And Area 3, which we call North Point, that's the area that the committee has designated for the demonstration projects. I'll talk a little bit about Area 4, which I describe as the Hillside District, and Area 5, the East Side. And again, even though we live in the desert, as we all know, we live in the Sonoran Desert, which is literally the most beautiful desert in the world, and there are many, many opportunities through native species, low water use trees, to create great shade environments. This, of course, is an image at our office in Scottsdale, and I can tell you we have neighbors who love to just come to our office at noontime and sit in our garden under shade and have lunch or read a book. So we think today we can expand the use area of the park during an extended period by introducing the trees. And just some examples of some of the aspirations for what we could create. So here is the master plan, and the master plan is organized, as I said, with a series of clusters of trees. And what we're thinking about with the notion of the tree planting strategies is certain areas, as I've mentioned, North Point in the upper of the image, upper part of the image, the Swallow Lawn along Swallow Boulevard. To the lower area, a lot of the existing components, the play area, the wildflower garden, which has been proposed, obviously the memorial. And as we know, to the lower right of the image, there's the existing dam area, which actually we won't plant trees because that's an area that's designated for the flood area. And then the East Meadow area, and then above that, the Blossom Grove. And the notion with the Blossom Grove is much like Washington, D.C. in the spring. Wouldn't it be great to have species of trees that we plant that we could have yellow blossoms in the springtime, just as a little reminder for all of us that spring is here. One of the things we've worked with the committee very closely on is the issue of views, and I must say we had a great turnout, as Mark mentioned, for our public meeting, and one of the questions that we got was the impact of views, and the answer is yes, we're going to impact views. If you stand behind one of the planted trees, you're going to impact your views. But what we've done is strategically placed corridors throughout the park and beyond so that we not only protect views of the fountain and the lake, but in the case if you're looking easterly, you'll still have the protected views of the mountains. And obviously the strategy with the 1.2 miles of the pathway system, the opportunity to create a path system that has a differentiation in terms of experience, as I mentioned. The other important aspect is, as you all know, is the disc golf. And I know you just recently had your tournaments out here, and it was great to see so many people. But we've been very careful not to impact the quality of the disc golf component, so we've built that into the strategy. So where there's areas of open lawn area that someone might want to sit sometime and have a picnic, either under the trees or actually in full sun, those areas oftentimes will be utilized for your disc golf. And some of the feedback that Jerry Butler's got about disc golf is that the players actually like it more difficult. So they want more trees. And then just to help visualize some of the strategies, here's a typical existing view kind of entering the park and in a big path system. And then here's what that projected view might be. Still seeing the lake and the fountain, but again, the idea of having a path system that has some comfort and shade. Here's an example of an existing view at the Veterans Memorial looking north. You can see there's an existing bench there. And lo and behold, there's no one sitting in the bench, which isn't too much of a surprise because it's probably too hot and wouldn't be comfortable. But strategically, in terms of planting some trees, what a great different environment that we could create. A view of the existing, from the existing amphitheater. Again, strategically placing trees so that we're not blocking views, but we're giving people the opportunity, both on the path system and off the path system, to experience some better shade environments. And then here's potentially a nighttime view, and there's, lo and behold, Avatar somehow snuck into there.
I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet either, Mr. Mayor. I'm told it's great. The other important thing we spend a lot of time on is thinking about species. And we've been committed to working closely with Mark and his team on appropriate species of trees so that it's all low water use materials. And over the years, Mark and his team has studied which trees have worked the best in Fountain Park. So we want to maximize those species. And in reality, that represents only about 8 or 10 species of trees. So when I talk about those clusters of tree planting, they're going to be organized so that it's just not repetitious. That will strategically introduce quantities of clusters so that it's different along different parts of the path system. The other important thing, of course, is the expectation of how big these trees are going to be, and this is just a simple illustration that shows a 48-inch box tree all the way down to a 15-gallon bucket tree. And the reality is that 36-inch box tree that you see there installed and irrigated is going to cost about $550 plus or minus. Okay, so in terms of the donations, we're going to be very careful to try to maximize our sizes so that it doesn't become a maintenance issue. As you can imagine, and again, we've coordinated with Mark's team. The smaller the trees, the more issue it is with maintenance and likelihood of non-survival. So the bigger trees that we plant, the better off we think we can be. And then again, here is that North Point area where we're suggesting is the location for the potential 2 demonstration projects. One might be up near the corner of the intersection so that as people are actually driving by, they can experience the new planting. And then one would be closer to the lake, literally right along the pathway system, so in fact people can initially experience that scenario of walking through some trees along the path system. To the degree and quantity, we don't know yet. That'll depend on the ongoing fundraising effort. And I think Jerry is going to spend a few minutes now talking about some of the other efforts.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Exactly 10 minutes. Good job.
Oh, we're ready to ding you.
Jerry, you have 2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes. Give him a minute and a half.
Thank you, Jerry, and helping lead this effort.
Well, thank you for the 2 minutes, and I'll try to be brief. What Jeff was talking about was one half of the overall project, and that is in Fountain Park. There is the other part of the greening of downtown as a part of the downtown visioning plan, was also doing something with the vacant lots. On this slide, we have a vacant lot with a concept of possibly planting trees around the perimeter and hopefully being able to do something on the lot itself. Right now, urban gardens are very attractive in a lot of communities, and what's shown here is the possibility of putting an urban garden on a vacant lot. Yes, it would have to be fenced. Yes, it would be temporary. Yes, it'd have to have water. And yes, there are a lot of issues to jump through. Keep in mind that with Fountain Park, you are in control, and in the case of a vacant lot, the property owner is in control. And what we're dealing with right now in downtown are 40 vacant parcels, of which 2/3 of the owners do not live in Fountain Hills. So our obstacles are much greater. Overall, there are 190 parcels in downtown that we would like to interact with, and a half of those landowners do not live in Fountain Hills. As far as commemorative ideas, we are still open. The committee is investigating and looking into a lot of alternatives. One here would be leaves, of which I have some examples. This is a stainless steel leaf. The letters are cut all the way through, and they can be, and the leaf itself can be set in concrete, horizontally or vertically in a wall or on a plaque. Or in this case, some commemorative ideas are shown in terms of possibly making trees with the leaves in different positions, because we're going to have different sized leaves depending on the donations that are made, the size of the donation. Also, there's a possibility that we wouldn't have to make the commemorative memorials in Fountain Park, but we could do it on the Avenue of the Fountains. This is an idea that's been brought up between Saguaro and Verde River. As the art fairs are going on Thursday afternoons and the farmers market, we've noticed that people that are exhibiting, having booths, things for sale, they constantly go for the shade to begin with. So more shade is needed. There is no concrete sidewalk running the length of the median. It's another opportunity to do something. Plus, we could add walls along there. There's many different options that are still available to us. The committee itself is taking the attitude that yes, we can. Yes, we know the economy isn't very good right now, but we believe that we can honestly do this. The gift is building a legacy for the future. It's going to be lasting and ongoing. We've also got a website set up at fountainhillcca.org, and also questions and comments can be sent into an email address at cox.net. Tonight, we'd also like to be able to accept your comments and any ideas that you may have. The greening project definitely will enhance our community. That's the attitude that this committee has started with, and we still maintain. Many of the committee members are here, and I'd like to have them stand up and be recognized. Next month is Volunteer Month.
All right.
Please stand up.
All right.
Thank you. Now, are we making progress? Yes. On March 2nd, we had the Public Information Open House. On February 22nd, a few weeks earlier, we had only collected $2,050. After the open house, after the promotional video that you all participated in that is now on YouTube, and a lot of people are looking at it, I'm happy to say that our donations right now are at $15,270 in a matter of a couple weeks.
Terrific. I thought
So-
people may have withdrawn their donations after seeing us dance on the YouTube, but that's good to hear.
We're going to have a sequel to that, and we're going to charge more to stay off of it, I guess. But we think we are making great progress in this effort. As Mark pointed out, it is a 2-year venture for us. We're convinced that we can't do it in 1 year. Yes, we'd like to have the demonstration projects in the ground by April 20th, or April 30th, which is Arbor Day. We believe it will be another way to promote the greening of downtown and to get more people to participate in this. This has to be a community affair. It is all private donations, and we need more people to participate. So in this case tonight, what we're asking the council for is to concur with allowing us to proceed with 2 demonstration projects in the North Point area. As Jeff said, that one will be very close to Saguaro so we can catch the motoring public as they go by and catch their eye and maybe get their attention, and also one down closer to the performance pad. How much we'll be able to invest in those 2 demonstration projects is still to be determined, but we've only got a couple of weeks left to make that determination and move forward. April 30th is not that far away. Also, along the course of this adventure, we have been talking about possibly making this, the greening of downtown, the community centennial celebration, where we could bring it all to a closure on February 14th, 2012, in celebration of the state centennial. But we did that maybe before the state came up with the program, but we've been talking about it, we've been promoting it. So before we go too much further, I'd like to have the council consider identifying this project as one of the community's centennial celebration project. And before we finish with this, because tonight we're also talking about the donations that we have received to date, I'd like to ask Patricia DeRoss to come forward with SRP, who has been a big contributor to the donation here for the greening of Fountain Hills. Patricia?
Thank you, Jerry. Welcome, Ms. Dross.
Good evening, Mayor Schlum, council members, Town Manager Davis. It's great to be here. I'm very happy to be here tonight to tell you a little bit about SRP's participation in the greening of downtown. After a meeting I had with Councilman Legier, he told me about the project, and I said, well, SRP has a program that gives trees to municipalities because we like green too. And this all started, well, for the past 15 years, SRP has been involved in some form of a tree donation program, but this called Trees for Change has been going on. I guess I need to click this. I think it's on here. Anyway. Okay. For the past since 2007, we've had our Trees for Change program, which started from the Rodeo Chetaskai fire. We currently ask our customers if they would like to add $3 onto their bill. All of that money goes for the Trees for Change program. We match that dollar for dollar up to $160,000. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. And 100% of that money goes to the program. And this allows customers to partake in reforesting areas that have been devastated by our forest fires, as well as help out local municipalities. So far, we've planted 82,000 ponderosa pine seedlings on 510 acres in the Overguard and Lakeside area that was destroyed by the Rodeo Chetaskai fire. And in the Kaibab National Forest, we've planted over 165,000 seedlings on 900 acres that was destroyed by another fire in 2006. Once those trees are matured, they each will capture up to 25 pounds of CO2 annually, as well as it helps restore the natural and rare habitat that's in the forest areas, and also helps restore our watershed areas up in our watershed, which is in the northeast part of the state. As far as the municipalities, Typically, we offer up to $5,000. We're very happy. Of course, we require low water usage plants, and you will the staff will work directly with local nursery, tell us what trees you want, and then we pay the bill for to the nursery. So it's a great program, and we're very happy to be involved in it.
Thank you, Mr. Ross, and I do appreciate the $500,000 donation. Is that not $500,000? Oh, $5,000, okay. Sorry about that. Thought we were done with our program. No, just kidding. Thank you very much for SRP stepping up and being a partner here. And I see Mr. Kloster there as well, one of the first contributors. I know maybe you're going to mention it was Eagle Mountain HOA contributed right off the bat. So that's just a great sign of the community coming together, even an HOA, joining together to contribute towards the greening program. So
And we have another $5,000 donation from the Langston Family Foundation.
Very nice.
So
outstanding.
There are many components of our community that are coming together to support this program, but we still have a long ways to go. So with that, we're now open for your comments or questions or any ideas that you would like to share with our volunteer committee.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Anyone from the public on this item?
No, Mayor.
All right. Kathy.
I just wanted to applaud the group because working on the visioning plan, who would have thought you would have come this far in that length of time? When Vern had said, we'll come back in a year, and that was during the summer, and see how things are going, and the thoughts are, with this economy, what are we going to have to show for it? Now look what we have to show for it, and I think that's great. That's huge. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And other comments or questions?
Make a motion.
Councilmember.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to mention, because you brought up the centennial thing, and I think, Rick and I, and we've had discussions about this, and so I don't know whether that's something that needs any kind of action, but at least at this point, just to let you know that we're definitely talking about that and talking about having a centennial committee, which would have other projects probably in it too, but absolutely what you were saying about this particular project falling right into this, and like you said, you thought of it before, before we even heard about that this was going to be a focus of the group, so it's pretty neat, and I think you can rest assured that that's part of the plan.
Well, we just didn't want to continue to promote it in any of our brochures if, in fact, it was not going to be a part of the centennial celebration. So we didn't want to step out too far.
Yeah. The Councilmember Contino.
Yes, I want to also thank the Chamber of Commerce for coming up with this idea along with the Swalback to work with the town. And I think that we have seen progress faster now than we've ever seen it before. So I want to thank everybody for that.
And of course, just to step back further, as mentioned a couple times, Greening the Downtown is an effort. It's part of the Downtown Vision Plan. That was a collaborative effort between the chambers, got it started, the town had bought in and joined into the contract, and of course the public with all the awesome feedback and the meetings we've had over 6 months, and ultimately came out with the vision plan that Denzak and Bernard and the whole cast and crew over there at Swalback Partners did such a tremendous job in working with us in a sensitive way and this moving forward. This group's demonstrated the greening great sensitivity to our centerpiece, our crown jewel in our town, the Fountain Park. Of course, you've touched on many of the sensitivities, views. Views. What else? Disc golf, and of course shade. The benefits it's going to bring are tremendous. But we're looking for consideration of approving and the creation of 2 demonstration projects. And of course, you're not looking to. And this is a volunteer effort, largely being led by volunteers. And I have to mention, it's a great public-private partnership in action. That needs further support to come to fruition, but you're off to a great start, and the video was fun. So if you haven't seen that, folks can go check that out.
And I think it's important for the public to know that these are all private funds being used to green up the Fountain Park, the landscaping, that it's not town money, it's all private donations.
And we'll just ask the group to continue to be sensitive to Fountain Park and working with staff, because we're looking at just approval of creating 2 demonstration projects near the amphitheater.
Right.
That's pretty broad, so we need you to make sure you're sensitive working with staff and council, and we know you will. So do we have a motion and a second?
I'll make one.
All right, look for a motion.
All right, Mayor, I move that we approve the Swaback Partners Landscape Plan under the greening of downtown as it pertains to the creation of the 2 demonstration projects near the amphitheater in Fountain Park.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you, everybody. Next item is 9, consideration resolution 2010-01, approving the Town of Fountain Hills 2009 Hazard Mitigation Plan. Randy, welcome. He's swimming upstream here. Swimming up a stream of volunteers. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to just give you a brief summary of our mitigation planning activities that we've been experiencing over the past year. The official name of this plan is the Maricopa County Multi-Jurisdictional Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. The Town of Fountain Hills joined forces with the county and other jurisdictions around the county to review and update the existing 2004 individual multi-hazard plan and consolidate them into just one single countywide multi-jurisdictional multi-hazard mitigation plan with jurisdictional summaries attached at the back for each community. And this plan is separate and distinct from our normal emergency operations plan that we know we have. Mitigation here is not about how we respond to emergencies like floods and wildfires, but how we, as a community, prevent the impact of such things in the first place. And the goal of this mitigation planning effort is to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to life and property from natural hazard events. And that is all it is just natural hazards, not any man-made type hazards. This updating process started about a year ago. Fountain Hills established a team of staff members from the Fire Department, MCSO, Administration, and Public Works. Our job was to identify and profile the natural hazards most likely to occur in our community, as well as assess the vulnerability to these hazards and establish goals, actions, and projects that mitigate the associated risks. A very important component of the adoption of this mitigation plan is that it will ensure eligibility for certain hazard mitigation grants and public assistance funds. And FEMA wanted to stress to us that if we did not adopt this, that it would severely impact our ability to go after grants for mitigation projects. Public input on the mitigation planning process was an important part, and residents were encouraged to educate themselves about the existing plan and offer comments on the update. This plan has been reviewed and approved by FEMA pending your adoption, and if approved, this plan will be in effect for a period of 5 years. And that's my little summary, and I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Randy. Anyone from the public on this item?
No, Mayor.
All right, council, look for a motion to approve resolution 2010-01.
Hello.
All right, any discussion? Kathy? No. What?
Oh, Henry.
Thank you for the help.
He was doing the move there.
All right.
I was getting ready to say aye.
All right. All in favor of resolution 2010-01 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Mayor 7-0.
All right. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Move on to item 10, council discussion direction to town manager. None on there. And item 11, summary of council requests and report on recent activity by the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Last council meeting, a citizen approached us with regard to a concern about a growing problem just north of the Botanical Garden. And this is Mr. Ward, Mr. Mayor, not you, Mr. Mayor, other Mr. Mayor. And I actually went out on site and walked it and have discussed some possible resolutions to that issue. As you probably know, water is carving quite a canyon in the soil adjacent to the road and I believe north of the Botanical Garden a ways, not on the Botanical Garden site itself. One of the solutions that I think Mr. Warder brought forward was to fill the area with materials, rock materials, creating kind of a swale of sort that would conduct the water safely past the area. We plan to meet with the citizen who had the concern and present that solution and calendar that for that repair. And that is my report.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Dickey?
Mayor, after that, the presentation that we just had about the centennial aspect of it, I wanted to make sure that maybe you could report back on because you were contacting 3 other municipalities.
Yes.
To see if we have to do anything formally so that they can continue to put that on their...
And I wrote that down as an action item, and I'll do that.
All right, thank you. One other item I meant to mention is something that staff is working on. Lori Geary, Economic Development Administrator, is working in an effort that we may have mentioned briefly before. Resident brought to our attention that Google is looking to experiment and test high ultra-speed broadband network and is looking for a trial location or locations. And so everyone knows Fountain Hills is in the process of completing an application to be considered for Google's fiber optic trial. And one of the efforts is to gain community interest or feedback from residents. So please go to the town website to indicate your interest or complete the survey called, when you go to the website, fountainfh.az.gov, click on Complete the Google Fiber Survey by Tuesday, March 23rd, and we'll keep you in the loop on how that is going. Now look for a motion to approve. Thank you.
I think we have to go back up to...
No second?
Oh.
Yeah. Parliamentarian. We do that?
We don't adjourn.
Do we adjourn? We can adjourn. Okay, thank you. We have a motion to adjourn. A second? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right. Thank you, Council. Back upstairs at 8:25.